then nobody's going to say anything. You know, I'm somehow now grandfathered in. I really think that you guys need to look at the larger picture here. This is, you know, I really felt that the way it started, the process started, and the way that the code enforcement dropped the ball. I believe we even heard that on one of the hearings, that they dropped the ball. This should have been stopped at that. They should have closed it down. There was no farm activity. There was no farm. That business should have not allowed to be set in place. And I don't even believe it could be considered grandfathered in, because we've been fighting and arguing about this all along. And we were told we got to let the code enforcement go through. I really didn't think that the code enforcement staff was going to advocate for a business over everybody else. But that's exactly what they did. They advocated for this business and gave them every opportunity and every, in a sense, loophole to set up a farm business, which, again, if you go out there, it's not a tree farm. W.C. Willis, I think it is, that's a tree farm. His accessory use, even if he plants trees, he goes in, they load up 10, 15, 20 trees, and they go plant them. That's an accessory use. They wouldn't plant them if they didn't have the primary business, which is actually the tree farm. They go and grow the trees, and then people say, hey, can you plant them? That's what this is about. And we're looking at this, and we seem to be jumping through and twisting and turning to try to allow lawn mowing businesses into ag. This is really what I'm looking at. And one of the things, if you go to Davie, Florida, they have, and I think most of us know Davie, Florida, and they're very ag friendly. They specifically state in their LDR, no lawn mowing services companies. No lawn. You can have all your ag businesses and the accessory uses with that. If you have a nursery and you're planting plants, great. You have a tree farm and you're planting trees, great. But you can't mow lawns. You want to mow lawns, you set it up like in our LDR in a commercial or industrial zoning. Heavy commercial, not just commercial, but heavy commercial. The LDRs state that we do have the responsibility, and code enforcement has the responsibility to determine if that business should be there. And we need to be sure that the only way I could see to make this, to stop jumping through all these hoops and having it, you can't have a lawn mowing business. You want a tree farm, fine. You want a nursery, fine. You want to plant your trees 10 years after the tree's grown, great, do all you want. But you can't be out here making your primary business a lawn mowing business and then hiding behind the Right to Farm Act or, well, this is an accessory, when everybody here knows it's primary. And that's what I'm asking you guys to really think, not just for the 1 or 2 or 3 businesses that are out there, but everybody else that's out there, the farmers, the ranchers, people doing ag. This is what because it's really 1 or 2 or 3 that are harming everybody. Nobody cares. Like I say, I live on 37th Street. I got White Rabbit Acre. That's an interesting property. He's been there forever. Nobody says anything. And his property is definitely interesting. So it's not about that. It's about this commercial business. And if we continue to allow this, it'll be on every street. And again, you on a 1.5 mile strip, you've got 3 of these businesses, because what's going to stop it? Nothing. Now, instead of 30 or 40 trucks going up and down that road, you could have 100 going up and down that road. And it's not farm equipment. It's not trucks pulling out oranges, which they only do like, what, once a year? They go in and then they take their oranges and they're out. This is every day. Come summertime, 7 days a week. So I'm really asking you to think about that, and if anything, modify my LDR amendment just to pull out lawn mowing services, because this is really what this is about, lawn mowing. It's not agricultural, it's not farming, it's detrimental to everything out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody, you guys want to take a break? All right, we'll take a break, 5 minutes. And at this time, I want to go ahead and jump to the Emergency Services District item, memorandum of understanding between Indian River County Fair Association, Vero Beach Firefighters Association, and Indian River County Emergency Services District for manpower coverage during the firefighters
Staff
fair.
recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for that. Thank you, Chief. And with that, we will dive back into the public hearing on the LDRs for accessory landscape services. Anybody from the public wishing to speak on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
My name is Jody Veldy, and we own the property at 6300 First Street Southwest, and we represent Tropical Property Management. As I've spoken before, residential use is also an accessory use to ag land on the property, and so they're asking for all of these allowances, restrictions, whatever they are, to be made for their also accessory use of residential. We have an active recognized tree farm by the state of Florida. We grow trees. We also bring in other trees and plants that we do wholesale, regardless of whether we choose to advertise that on our website or not. And before you guys do make changes, and as Mr. O'Brien said, possibly make it more restrictive than staff has even recommended at 25%, we currently still have the most restrictions from Palm Beach to Brevard County on accessory landscape use already. And as I have previously stated at the Planning and Zoning, landscape debris is a recognized agricultural product, which totally changes the entire context of this discussion. So I'd like to leave you guys with that. And thank you so much for all your work, Roland.
What you said is recognized?
It is, landscape debris is a recognized agricultural product by the state of Florida.
Anybody else from the public wishing to speak on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name's Tim Campbell. I live at 733 37th Street, Vero Beach, Florida. I've lived there for over 20-something years. I'd like to have this thing here so I could do my,
He's turning it on for you.
I'm a taxpayer and a part commercial business owner. This is services I got off the internet. It includes, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse about the land use. Was with Mr. Simmons and filed to eliminate that. I wanted to eliminate that because of all the rhetoric we just heard. We already got snookered on our street. We got a commercial business there that shouldn't be there. And I'm here to make sure the county don't get snookered out of taxes. Okay? These businesses, all they do is they come in here, they're a commercial business, they should pay taxes like anybody else. A plumber, auto mechanics dealer, a tree trimmer. They are no different than any other trade. I'm in the roofing business. I pay my share of taxes for my commercial piece of property. Part of owner I am. Here's the scope. Caribbean right here. They got 9.8 acres. They pay $5,676 in taxes. Okay, here's Billy's Auto. They have their commercial business, same as Caribbean. They got 0.92 acres. They pay $7,545. Look at the ratio. If we eliminate this, we will stop getting snookered on our taxes. All these people do this for is for a tax benefit. Here's another guy here. He's our neighbor there. Jimmy's Tree Service. He's got 2.9 acres. The man pays $4,480 in taxes. Southern Plumbing. They do plumbing. I'm sure they could be ag too. They do irrigation. The guy's got 0.63 acres. He's paying $5,468.30 for 0.63 acres and a building that's a quarter of the size of Caribbean. Now, why are we letting these people get away with this tax? Because they can go through here and go around all the smoke and mirrors. Mr. O'Brien, you had nailed it right on the head. That's the only reason they're doing it, is for taxes. They have no business being in the ag business. They're not in the ag business, and they have no intention to be in the ag business. The only business they're in is commercial, landscaping, lawn mowing. The business that's on our road don't even mow any grass on the west side of the river. It's all on the beach. They shouldn't even be on a road. If they wanted to mow grass over there, they should be on US 1, on Old Dixie, like these other people. They're doing commercial services. They're no more difference than a plumber changing a leaky pipe, or when your car breaks down, you take your car to the shop, or you call a tree trimmer and have them trim your tree. There's no difference than that. And why this county lets these people continue to come in and smoke and mirror the way in to get their big commercial businesses built up and pay restricted taxes on a tax basis that should be commercial is beyond me. And I'm not going to stand up here and bore you people, but I think that's what we need to be looking at. That's the only reason these people are doing that, and most of 90% of the people in this room know that's why the reason their people are doing this. We need just to stop thinking about this and that, why the ratio and if they are ag or not, and really look at the idea of why these people are doing this. And the people are doing this just to avoid county taxes, and it's hurting everybody here. And I don't understand why Bob, and he's gone now, and I hate to talk to anybody that's gone, did all this big old survey to help these people to come in and keep avoiding paying our taxes, paying commercial taxes for commercial business. And that's all I got to say. I hope you consider me and Spencer's proposal. Just eliminate it. Eliminate that clause and let commercial people pay their commercial bit of taxes. They're not farmers. They're never going to be a farmer. They're coming here just so they can put their commercial business in there and skate on taxes. And people say, well, they won't create jobs. People that don't mow their own grass is never going to mow their own grass. They're always going to hire somebody. So whether they're paying commercial taxes or skating underneath it and not getting their paying their share of commercial taxes has got no bearing on the workforce that's going to be mowing our grass if you don't want to mow your grass. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak on this item? Come on up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Yes, I'm Marilyn Carlsworth Ingram. I live at 6985 37th Street. I've always lived down the same half mile all my life. My grandparents moved there 1915. They were farmers when they first came, and they farmed for vegetables and they shipped them out of state. They elected to quit that and went to citrus because it was still swamp. They didn't have the drainage, the big drainage canal out there. They were growing up when it was being built, being dug on that. And it's always been a quiet, quaint little road until recently on that. Getting these trucks and everything, I'm just thinking about the future. I don't want, if we have that one there on that, I don't want any others to come down our road and add to what we have going down the road on that. As right now, when I walk my dog in the morning and in the evening, especially in the morning, they are considerate to me, the big commercial trucks, when they're leaving on that. But it's not as enjoyable because I'm having to watch the traffic, these big vehicles and the cars. And I have an 11-year-old beagle. She loves to smell. And, we're all the time all across the road trying to track her smells. And I'm having to constantly look in front of me, behind me, to make sure that I'm not going to be in somebody's way. So it's not as enjoyable for me sometimes. Sometimes I don't have anybody on the road. But in the mornings, Gracie always likes to walk at 7 o'clock or before, and that is when the traffic is. The employees coming down there, and then the big trucks leaving on that. And like I said, I'm just looking for the future. For me, I just own a house, which was the Forslings house, which they settled down the street in early 20s. My original house was built in 1921. And my neighbor across the street, the Johnsons, they moved in the late 20s and built their house in the early 30s, and Johnny still lives there. We have a lot of history down the road on that, and I just hate seeing this little area go into having other commercial businesses down the road on that. That's all I want to say. For the future, for me, I don't want any others. If we have to, we're stuck with what we have. I just don't want any more down the road.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public?
Good afternoon, Amy Simmons, 7350 37th Street. I'm also obviously for the Simmons amendment to the LDRs. Mr. O'Brien, I want to thank you profusely because you clearly did your homework on this and you are advocating for the people. That's what you're elected to do. You're all elected officials. This issue is greater than 37th Street. This issue is hundreds of property owners who did their due diligence. They're in Ag 1 zoning. They bought their properties based on that and what could be near them and around them. We were there before the nuisance came into the neighborhood. So we have spent a lot of money, whether we have 2 horses, a house, and a cow. That is what the zoning allowed, and that is what we based our decisions on. That seems to be spoken about in such a way as if there's something wrong with that or we shouldn't be able to do that. That's what we saw when we looked at the zoning. We have groves across from us. We have farms on the street. We all know that. We came in there knowing that. A statement was made that residential is accessory use. That's not true. That's what the zoning is. Ag 1, Ag 2, Ag 3, that designates the residences that can be in there. We have LDRs for a reason, and what's going on here violates all of them. And we're beating this dead horse about whether it's ag or a business. It's obvious to our eyes. We know that. The government here is advocating for 10 businesses over hundreds of businesses and thousands of acres. This process here is very flawed. If you're going to turn ag zoning into commercial, you should be doing that with a lot of public input, workshops. Everybody should be allowed. There's a lot of money at stake here, a lot of owners and property rights. You're taking a back door into doing that in order to protect what appears to be county staff and their errors. The affidavit clearly said they were putting a farm building in there. They were fraudulent. That hasn't been acknowledged. We haven't gone public with this. We've worked your process. We've listened. We've gone through all the hoops and the obstacles and paid money to do it as taxpayers to be heard. But we are going to go public. It doesn't end here today. You guys, this is a legacy issue. This is your legacy as commissioners. Are you going to allow ag zoning in Indian River County to be destroyed? Well, we're not. We're going to fight it, and we're going to save it, and we're going to protect it. Whether we were here 5 years or 50 years, this is what we love and value and protect about Indian River County, and I would expect all of you to do the same. That's what you're elected to do, with all due respect. But I thank you, and I thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments, questions, concerns? Yes, Commissioner Solari.
So I want to begin by thanking everybody for coming here today who spoke. I mean, this is, for me, was one of those issues where when I came in here, was not clear where I was going to end up. And it's part of a public process where you listen to both sides, which informs elected officials and gives them guidance on where to go. And it actually, the conversation here today clarified a number of things for me, and actually made, for me, my decision very clear and simple. It just takes a few statements. Residential lawn business is not farming. I mean, I was in farming for 25 years, never once would have considered residential lawn business a farming activity. So a commercial residential landscaping business, for me, is not an agricultural business. I'll note that the right to farm has been discussed a number of times, but for the last 2 years, one of the biggest battles I've been fighting is the idea that the dumping of biosolids on farmland is somehow farming, which I've been fighting for the last 2 years because it's simply not, and I don't believe that having a commercial lawn business is in any way a farming activity. So for me, I'd like to see us today grandfather in existing uses and eliminate the commercial lawn businesses from the county code, section 911.064D. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. Other comments from commissioners?
Yes, I have a couple. One, was some mention of the Willis folks. I don't know them. I think they have a great operation, but just took the time to go to their website, and it says our team of expert landscape designers and lawn maintenance professionals. So they're really kind of in the same boat as some of the other folks are. Agree with it or not, I kind of went back to Chapter 163 under agricultural lands and definitions of farm and farming. Then it takes you to Section 823, Florida Right to Farm Act, and then it goes one step further under definitions, farm product. I'm not going to read all of them, but it covers a pretty wide, diverse group of things that I wouldn't consider as farming, but it's protected under the right to farm side. So whether I agree with it or not, I want to just make sure what we do here today, that we don't move something forward that ends up becoming in violation with this, with these Florida statutes, because as we all know, the state preempts a lot of things we would like to do, and they remind us that we've gone too far on certain things. And I'm guessing, Dylan, if you had looked at some of these, saying start at 163.3162, and then I used the tab to go to 823.14. Yep, and then the 581 undersea farm products. So if they're actively growing pretty much essentially anything that grows, other than they do talk about invasives, and it's separate from citrus, that those, in my interpretation, seem to be activities covered under the Right to Farm Act. Now then you have the accessory of the maintenance of that. Obviously, there is something mentioned, I think back in 823, that talked about maintenance spraying. Let's see if I can find it again. Application of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, insecticides. And again, you may say that's related only to citrus spraying, but I don't think it's just under the definition of farm operation. So again, not agreeing or disagreeing, just reading what what their statutes.
Commissioner, would that be on-site application or is that off-site?
I don't see where they differentiate, other than under aerial spraying. Obviously, aerial you would think would be broader, but aerial seeding and spraying.
Yeah, I would think the reference would be on-site. If you have to spray for insects on your crop, if you have to fertilize your crop, citrus guys put out a lot of stuff for fungus or whatnot.
What's under, part of the tab is under roadside farms, farm markets. I mean, I'd leave it up to Dylan too. That's under 3B under definitions. A is,
And if, just to clarify, I'd be happy just to read it. So farm operation under the Right to Farm Act means all conditions or activities by the owner, lessee, agent, independent contractor, and supplier which occur on a farm in connection with the production of farm, honeybee, or apiculture products, and includes but is not limited to the marketing of produce at roadside stands or farm markets, the operation of machinery and irrigation pumps, the generation of noise, odors, dust, and fumes, ground or aerial seeding and spraying, the placement and operation of an apiary, the application of chemical fertilizers, conditioners, insecticides, pesticides, and herbicides, and the employment and use of labor. So that is the full definition of farm operation.
and I don't know if that means that that has to take place on the particular site in question, or if it's services provided off-site. The aerial, I would think, would be.
Sit on the farm.
Yeah, it's a which occur on a farm in connection with the production of, yeah,
Right.
so that was mentioned on there.
As an operative.
Okay. That's all I have at the moment.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Madam Chair, thank you. I want to thank everybody for being here. It's been a long process. There's been some great points and discussion. We've heard some history. I want to thank the last two speakers as well. Hit home. I did have a question, and we're not bringing up the code case. Roland, when in the past, during your visits or viewings, as we'll say, did you see that evidence of growing, other than trucks growing?
Well, the case was initiated because there was no evidence of on-site nursery. That was the issue, that was the violation, accessory use prior to principal use establishment. The remedy through the Code Enforcement Board was they had to establish that principal use and at a ratio where there was more area associated with the nursery versus the area associated with the accessory use. That was the basic premise.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going down that path because I know that we all agreed that the trucks grew and the trees didn't. And it was on the wrong direction.
Well,
You encouraged them to fix
yeah, well, part of, yeah, not to go too into it, but
I don't want to get into it.
the property owner indicated that in order for them to establish the nursery, they had to be on site, put in the irrigation, get everything started before they did the planting. That was part of the argument as to whether there was reason why they were there before they planted the nursery. Irrespective of that, the board gave them time to plant the nursery, which they did. And it does exist, and that's essentially how that case went.
So there is growing going on now.
Right, the back portion of the property is now a planted tree nursery.
And there's some kind of mulching going on too.
They have mulching, they have container plants as well,
Right.
to some extent.
Okay, I just wanted to just cover that now because I heard Commissioner Solari discussing well-founded point. And yes, I do have grave concern because it appears that there is some form of agriculture taking place, although it started out on the wrong path. And that's why we're here today. We're also here today because of when people locate in and around an airport because they get a great deal and they admire the planes until they hear the noise in the evening, then they don't like that. And we also here because sometimes people find themselves choosing a gated subdivision until they find out all the HOA rules. Or when they move on to Old Dixie and then find out that there's a big fast train coming, death train, if you don't. So there's always concerns after the fact and sometimes before the fact. I think that the position that we have had in this county was well-founded until it gets out of hand, and then it starts being a concern. I agree that this is not a typical agricultural endeavor, neoclassical cultural endeavor. My grave concern is that there are a handful of businesses, we'll say business, I don't know if it's agriculture fully, some of them do farm plants, farm trees, that exist. And I wanted to ensure that we were not placing them in harm's way. The ironic part about it is if we want to not place them in harm's way, we're not changing this scenario. This scenario does not change if we do that. We grandfather in the actual scenario that the Spencers are concerned with will not change. And I don't know if we're fixing a challenge today for them or for the greater good of the community that was mentioned with the last two speakers about quality of life and endeavors and taxation. So with that, fully support the grandfathering in of any endeavor that exists that was allowed, allowable, or approved by whatever means in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, a year ago, I know I stated the fact that when I'm out there pushing my lawnmower around my yard, I don't think, hey, look at me, I'm farming here today. And when the commercial truck comes up to mow my neighbor's yard, I don't look over there and say, hey, look at those guys farming over there. So I never have believed that commercial lawn service is any aspect of farming whatsoever. And you know, I agree wholly with Commissioner Solari. You know, when you have these public hearings and you hear a lot of the input, sometimes the path you want to take becomes very clear. And my initial opening remarks were about reducing the ratio size and things like that. But then it became very clear to me that the only way to achieve what I'm looking to achieve would be to go with the Simmons-Campbell proposed LDR amendment. And from what I've heard, I don't agree that the people who spoke here today are anywhere related to moving to an airport type of people. From what I heard, all of them were there long before any of these commercial businesses went in. So I think it's almost an insult to them to claim that they came and moved near the airport and now they're complaining about it. I think they were there. I think it was Mr. Hendricks who said he checked the LDRs when he bought his property in '95, and then the accessory use was added in '97 after he had purchased his property some 25 years ago. So I think we have to be true to this, and I found it kind of, and if the presentation was correct from what Mr. Hendricks showed, was that for a ag business to go in ag land has to be a special exemption process, but an accessory off-site commercial business is either allowed or would only be administrative permit. To me, that seems totally backwards. So I would concur with Commissioner Solari's proposal, and I believe, Dylan, your guidance yesterday when I spoke to you on this was that if we did want to adopt something other than the staff recommendation, your feeling is we would have to go through another public hearing process. Is that correct?
So to Commissioner O'Brien, under the Florida statutes, if the board were to be considering an ordinance which was to change the permitted uses, the conditional uses, and/or prohibited uses, then there is a 2 ordinance code public hearing process. And such, if the board were to consider something different than the concept of adding these criteria and going to the special exception or to the prohibition, I would recommend a 2 public hearing process.
Okay. And I do want to say that I'm very supportive of farming in general. I'm not against farmers. I'm very supportive. And actually, I would like to see the Ag Advisory Committee come back and look at some ideas to try to make ag land more viable. Because with the citrus loss that we're seeing, I think the ag people need to have value in their land at some level. And I don't think a commercial lawn service is that value, but there might be other softer uses that we need to look at. So personally, I'm very supportive of ag and ag in the ag lands, but this is one situation where I don't believe that the commercial lawn service is appropriate. And so I would support Commissioner Solari and his recommendation that we eliminate the landscaping services as an accessory use. And then when we come back with this, I would like to see, because I still go back to what Commissioner Adams said a year ago about her family business and they would install the trees. And I think, in my mind, that is part of the tree farm, is if you sell a tree and not getting into retail or wholesale, but just, if they need one truck and a backhoe to plant the tree they sell, I can live with that. I hope you all would understand that. And maybe that would come back as administrative approval or special exemption for a installation component as an accessory use. And I can see that nexus a lot clearer, that somebody's got to dig, and if it's a big tree, a big oak or a big palm, I don't want to dig that hole with a shovel myself. I need somebody with a backhoe or something. So I can see that nexus, that installing the tree is part of having that tree farm. So when it comes, well, assuming we go down that road, if it comes back, I would like to see some type of language where they can come back and ask for a special exemption or administrative permit for installation of products that they have grown on their tree farm, I guess would be kind of the language I'd be looking for.
So we discussed that at Ag Advisory, actually. And one of the concerns of the committee was, at that point, then how do you ensure that it's something that was grown there? How do you provide that oversight? And there was also discussion regarding the ongoing maintenance of some of those installed trees as far as trimming and pruning and that type of thing. So I think there's a way to address it. I just don't know how involved or specific. And I think that's why Ag Advisory kind of made the recommendation that they did, because once you start kind of getting into that, it becomes really not
get that,
undoable, but just to throw that out there. And
I get that.
but that is one of the concerns, was that the tree farm is the legitimate ag use. And then the landscape services or lawn maintenance, and there is a difference between the two, is the ancillary use. So they get the ag designation based on the tree farm itself. And then the other services, conceptually, whether it's being abused or not, the concept is that those are services that relate to that ag use. So we also had a big discussion about what happens when you have using White Rabbit Farms as an example. You have White Rabbit Farms, and now organic and locally sustainable produce and those types of things are very popular, and you have more people coming there to purchase product. Not that they are, but just as an illustration. Then does that become an issue because that's adding additional traffic to the road? And I don't know the answers to all those questions. I'm just trying to relate kind of where the advisory committee their heads were at, because the concern from that committee is, while there's a recognition that there are people gaming the system, because there's always going to be people that game the system or take advantage of whatever the rules are, how do you ensure that we're not impacting the legitimate users or the good actors while we're trying to ensure that the bad actors aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So
And
there's
that's
probably
all-
more work that could be done, but that was the general
Yeah, very
conversation.
good points, Madam Chair. And I'd just say that the one thing I'll fall on the sword for is to eliminate commercial lawn service from the uses. And if there's a way to work in the installation side, I'd be happy with that. But if we can't make it work in a reasonable manner, then that's fine too. But I think getting it out of there is my priority.
And that's where I was going today. I mean, I will know a couple things in practicality. Say when the citrus started to go bad and people actually started to put in tree farms, they weren't buying the equipment to plant it somewhere else for 10 freaking years. I mean, people knew it was a tree farm well beforehand because trees are slow-growing entities unless it's actually something like citrus trees that you're growing in a nursery that you're actually going to put in a grove. So I think some of these issues aren't really issues. But I think today, I mean, we are faced with one particular thing. And I think that that's where we ought to go. I think the Ed Committee ought to realize that things are changing as they continually do. And so it's a good time to take a look at other types of things which may be considered ag or not. But that, I don't think, is today's job.
Right.
So having heard this board and counted to 3, I'd be very happy to make a motion that we go ahead and grandfather in the existing uses, but go forward and eliminate commercial landscape businesses from the county code, section 911.064D, and any other places that may be in the code referring to what we're discussing today.
Madam Chair, if
So there's a motion and a second. Yes, Jason. The second by Commissioner Fleischer. Yes, Jason.
I just want to be clear on a couple things. So we're grandfathering, that's clear. And I would ask that we maybe define the whole landscape versus lawn maintenance thing, because I think we're getting in dangerous territory with those tree farms, and the retail sales. I mean, if you look, retail sales are in the Right to Farm Act, it explicitly addresses things like roadside produce sales. So, I mean, right there is an endorsement that if it's an ag product, even retail sales are protected. So we need to make sure that anything we do would not impact a tree farm and them doing landscaping activities. I think maybe lawn maintenance or lawn mowing or something, we might want to just work on what that definition is, because I believe, and I'm not an attorney, so I'll leave it up to the attorneys and the planners know more than me about this, too, but I believe we need to be very careful with anything that could be construed as a tree farm that's providing services related to them planting those trees on someone's site.
I think that lawn maintenance is reasonably easy to define, just starting with the fact that it is primarily directed at the care of residential yards. And I think Dylan can work on that a little bit further. But you can also use things like we did with our short-term rental ordinance, where we worked to make sure that it was not used for commercial uses. And in that, I believe we actually said that you can look at the internet and see how that entity is advertising itself. So, you know, it was pointed out today that some of the lawn maintenance businesses in their websites are the primary thrust of their websites is a lawn maintenance business where they're sending people out to, on a regular basis, maintain the residential lawns of people, particularly on the island. And so I think with a couple of those things, it'd be pretty easy to clarify that and separate it from a tree growing business.
If I could make a suggestion, I've heard from Dylan and Jason that if this is where we want to go, we will have to bring it back for
Absolutely.
2 public hearings. So perhaps if that's where we want to go, then we give staff the opportunity to put something together that has the guidance of this discussion, and then bring that back for a public hearing and voting upon, instead of making a motion and voting today. We just don't take action on this item, or just vote it down. and then bring something back? Because it sounds like whatever the motion is giving some cause for concern, and I'm concerned about the process. I want to
Well,
make sure the
motion- This is
process.
simply a motion to direct staff to come up with an ordinance which eliminates commercial landscaping from the code.
Okay, well, that was, the motion I heard was to grandfather it in and
Well, no, you
remove it from
grandfather,
the
I
code.
believe we have to grandfather the.
But if the motion is to direct staff to bring something back, then I think that
Well,
addresses it.
that's what it,
But I think there was some confusion from staff.
Right, and my question is clarity, you know, and I think we need time to work out the details, but something more like lawn maintenance is just off the cuff would be my preference rather than commercial landscaping. So it's something that, hey, if you're mowing people's grasses, that's excluded, but if you're planting trees for your tree farm, we're not getting involved in that. So I think we need to be very clear on that, because I think the planting of someone's tree farm trees is likely protected under the Right to Farm Act.
So if I'm understanding your motion,
it was not meant to be so specific in that,
Oh.
in defining anything at the time. Generally, when we make a motion like that, it's pretty well understood. So I will make it in the most general sense, but I think we understand what we're talking about here today. But I'd also then like to apply the pending ordinance doctrine so that we don't, in the meantime, slip in 3 to 6 other like businesses.
I think we've already adopted the pending, but we'll keep it going, okay.
Okay, so.
It's in place now, but we'll
But
continue it.
the audience doesn't know that and what it means, so we can put everybody
Okay.
to rest that.
Just for clarification, it has been in place since this was originally brought forward, and it will continue to be in place until it's resolved.
And that, including the modified discussion as far as where it's heading.
Okay, so is everybody clear on what the motion is and what we're doing today?
Partially, I have a question that
Sure.
may change it, may not. So if you grandfather somebody in that has a legal site today and they want to add on to an activity or building on their site, how is that covered under grandfather?
It's not.
Can't do it.
You can't do it. You can't, if you're grandfathered in as you exist this very second, and you can't expand or change that use, or else you lose the grandfathering.
Yeah, it's a legal nonconformity, and you can't expand the nonconformity.
Okay. So this would cover things such as sod farm, dirt farm, tree farm, shrub farm.
Again,
Which would cover that.
Well, we're trying to break out lawn mowing. So here's the scenario I see. You have a project on the beach, pick anyone. They say, we want to have all this landscaping provided. A local grower may grow some, they may import some, and they say, and whoever puts it in takes care of it for the first 18 months. So you're going to have them have one operation here to grow and inventory the material to install on the job. And then you're going to tell me he has to have another place of business somewhere else to then park his mowers at, to then go mow the property that he's inherited with the installation contract.
No.
No?
I mean, if you have a sod farm, you've got 1,000 acres out there and a crew that puts in sod. I mean, I think we're dancing on the wrong type of pins right now. I mean, we all understand what we're talking about, and there's nothing really tricky about this. So I think that staff's got good enough direction to come up with an ordinance which will address the problem that we're talking about today, and we can move on.
And back on the grandfathering, so if they have a site plan that shows a prior approved building, is that covered or not? That may or may not be constructed yet.
You'd have to ask Dillon Legal if it is not. Again, I've never heard of that case before, so I don't have a response to that.
And just to piggyback on Commissioner Solari's motion, I would assume that until the ordinance comes back that actually makes those changes official, that the pending ordinance doctrine holds. So the grandfathering would occur when we approve the new ordinance, correct? I mean, that might be but that seems to be what his issue is. I mean, I think we're at the point where we're probably splitting hairs. Pending ordinance kind of controls anything new happening at this point. Once the new ordinance is put in place, if and when that happens, then that would include the grandfathering language, correct?
From planning staff's perspective, if someone came in and wanted to expand their lawn mowing business operation right now, in a grandfathered situation, they would not be allowed to do it under the pending ordinance doctrine,
Because of the pending.
based on the direction and what we're talking about here today.
So, no, whether it's a current existing business or a new business coming in, the pending ordinance doctrine holds and precludes anybody from doing anything till we
Right.
figure out what we're
We
doing.
don't have to wait till the final ordinance. We're saying you can't do it because of where this, based on all the discussions and drafts. And we'll see how it plays out when it's finally adopted, but you can't do that until we figure it
So
out.
we're kind of in a holding pattern with everything. And does that address your concerns, Commissioner Zort?
I guess we'll see how it all comes together and see how we address Jason's concerns on, I mean, if you spend any amount of time, and again, agree or disagree with the state statutes, it's what we're bound by, even though we have to hold our nose sometimes when we're, like the biosolid application, you know, sometimes they allow it, but we don't agree with that. So we'll see what the draft looks like and see what enhancements or improvements it needs, but the grandfathering, so you're grandfathered in of what you have today and whether or not you have a site plan that may have depicted something in the future, the question on that, if you can do that or not, would have to come back from Dylan at a later time.
Well, no, staff is saying that they are not entertaining anything to do with either expanding current businesses or new businesses coming in at this point, and they
Or not
haven't
new,
been because of
existing.
pending,
Big-
no expansion to existing either because of pending ordinance.
Right, what it is the motion is to make commercial landscaping, non-conforming use in ag land. Okay, so the pending ordinance says all the existing commercial lawn units out there today are grandfathered in as a non-conforming use. But as Phil said, you can't expand a non-conforming use. That's what you have is what you have now. And that
Even
would be the
if you may have
same,
a plan that says.
that would be same if you
phase one,
come in with a site plan to want to do something. If it's for a commercial lawn business, it's non-conforming and it's not allowed because the pending ordinance is in effect.
Well, no, I get that on new, but if they have a plan that they were originally approved under and it had phase one, phase two, phase three, and maybe they've only done phase one, and I don't know of a particular scenario, I'm just trying to think through, because some of these sites, they're only using 50% of their sites, so they must have had some plan, and whether they had a site plan.
Yeah, and just to, again, to
place.
clarify, this would not restrict the planting area. If they want to expand their planting area, that's the bona fide principal use act. That's not the non-conforming aspect that we're talking about.
The
Just-
nonconformity is the accessory use.
It's accessory lawn maintenance
Accessory lawn
use.
maintenance use.
But we understand your point, and that's something we would look at if the issue.
Right, because the contract impairment clause, I would think, would kick in. If they had a phase of a site plan approved and they haven't built it yet, that I would think that would be
Right,
protected.
and I'm not
That would
aware of
be
any at this
Dylan
point, but we
that
would
have
look
that.
at that if it came up.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, so there is a motion by Commissioner Solari to have staff bring something back to deal with the use, the landscape use. So that's what's in front of us, to have something come back to us for future discussions.
Which also included the grandfathering of
Mhm.
non-conforming
Yes,
use.
I think we've,
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to.
And maybe just to clarify, I guess then the concept is that the current ordinance, the board's basically denying the current ordinance before us and then moving forward with the second
with a
phase.
new ordinance.
Yep.
New blended.
Correct. Yes, Jason?
Right, and then I want to make a statement and gain clarity to make sure that my direction for these things that are in the questionable area of Right to Farm Act go. You know, there've been some statements today that staff made mistakes or that we advocated for certain folks. I don't think staff advocates for one party versus the other. We present our professional recommendation. I will say that the property that kicked this process off had filled out an affidavit. That is an optional affidavit. Staff has received significant criticism over even having that affidavit. We had to change it to make it clear that it's voluntary because we can't be regulating the development under bona fide agricultural uses. So somehow someone maybe making a mistake on their affidavit that was sent to us as somehow being blamed that staff has dropped some ball here somewhere. I just want to be clear that staff's intention is not to go actively out in the ag areas and looking for violators of something such as this. That if we're presented with something, we will look at that information. But unless you want us to take a more active role than we do for other code enforcement type matters, we're not going to be actively going out there and looking to see if someone's doing something inappropriate on their ag land. Unless you want to direct me otherwise, and then we can go out there and be more aggressive towards those potential ag, non-ag businesses.
I don't think this board said anything like that. I think it's maybe.
No. People in the audience said that. I want to get clarification. No, I just want to get clarification with my direction from this board. If we're to go out there and actively look for, to prevent future other near ag businesses.
No.
I want to get clarification on that.
Take your direction from the audience. Your job is to take the audience direction from the board. This board never gave any suggestion of anything like that. And this board, I didn't hear them condemn anything that staff did today. I certainly, in my motion, didn't say anything that could be in any way interpreted as any slight on the staff. Staff often has very difficult activities to do, and they did a very reasonable job here. But the board, as a matter of policy, after the public hearing has come up with something which simply says, what I thought was very simple, to remove the commercial landscaping or lawn, whatever you want to call it, businesses. I certainly did not advocate a stronger code enforcement board, having code enforcement proactively do anything, nor would I. And I think you need to try to separate problems that arise because the way the Right to Farm Act has come up and is applied by the state from what we have to live with. And those are two different things. We wouldn't have a problem with biosolids today in this county if the Right to Farm Act hadn't been abused by so many people for non-farm activities. So this board often has to deal with things that the state does, which sometimes challenges our skill set, but that is just part of our job as commissioners and as limited human beings. So, I think, again, the staff has done a great job, and I certainly don't want you to feel that we're trying to add another employee or two to go out and search out wrongs throughout the county. Thank you.
Okay, there is a motion by Commissioner Solari with a second by Commissioner Flesher. If there is no further discussion, we will take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries 4-1. All right, with that, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Next item is a public hearing for the Citrus Hideaway Subdivision Water Assessment Project, Resolution 3. Welcome, Mr. Burke.
Thank you. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. We have a short 5-slide presentation to walk through this project. There was an initial request to evaluate the feasibility of county water that was received in May. We received petitions about August, and then we brought that to the board on October 16th, 2018. 10 out of the 11 benefiting properties were in favor of this project, supermajority, and so we decided to proceed forward. Mr. Vitapka had done some of the design services. We went out there to get the survey work to be able to move forward.
Okay.
Fast forward to February of this year, and we held Resolution 1, the providing resolution, Resolution 2, the time and place, the setting resolution, for today's public hearing to discuss this project. Upon approval of the February meeting, staff sent out certified letters to all 11 benefiting parcels on the 5th of February to notify them of today's meeting. Here is a project aerial map of the benefiting properties in question. Again, the property on the northeast corner is already a customer, so they would not be considered a benefiting property, but you'll see the red outline for the 11 properties just south of County Road 510. The design calls for tapping the 16-inch main on the north side and then doing a directional bore underneath the roadway, coming down 75th Court with a hydrant at the end near the cul-de-sac, and then feeding the houses, the benefiting property owners with services at the private location. So the total cost estimate is just over $78,000. You break that out over equitable per parcel cost of just over $7,101.52. We broke out some of the proposed pricing. The capital cost can be financed for 10 years. The board sets the financing rate in January of this year. It is currently at 4.75%. We broke out the consumption for about 5,000 gallons, so give or take, it's about $20 for water only. The per parcel cost is about $75, and the water impact fee, which is $1,300 per ERU, can be financed for 5 years at $24.38. So just over $118 a month when you're looking at some of the approximate costs, including consumption and the assessment and the impact fees if it's financed. Today before you, we have Resolution 3. We are holding a public hearing, so all those who are against the project have an opportunity to address the board. Staff is looking to have our labor contractor, Blue Goose Construction, to be able to do the installation. If approved today, we would move forward with with the installation of this project to hopefully have final completion. As noted in the agenda, we both have the FDEP permit, Florida Department of Environmental Protection permit, and Indiana County right-of-way permit for this process. Attached as part of the backup as well is a resolution that's prepared by the county legal department to formally accept an easement over, across, and under the 60-foot private roadway known as 75th Court for the sole purpose of public utilities. But keep in mind, it's not to accept the street as a public street, and nor is it be used for maintenance of that street. So that is attached as part of the backup. So funding for the project is derived from the assessment fund. Assessment fund revenues are generated from the assessment fees paid for by the benefiting property owners. That total amount is $78,116.72. Staff recommends that the board open up the public hearing and after receiving input, either adopt the Resolution 3 as presented or modify said resolution based on the public input, and to also approve the attached easement for utility purposes. Before the board opens up the public hearing, I'm available for any questions that may have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Burke? No? Seeing none, at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Anybody from the public wishing to speak on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner O'Brien and a second by Commissioner Flesher. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is a public discussion item, a request to speak from Railside LLC. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Darren Offsink. I'm with a company called Railside LLC. We own a 32-acre property in Fort Pierce where Tropical Recycling was based. Tropical Recycling had the recycling contract with Indian River County. There's been a lot in the news lately about what happens to the recycling that's collected from people's homes and businesses. I'm here to show you exactly what happened to the recycling that was collected from Indian River homes and businesses. Unfortunately, it was dumped and abandoned on our property. The current estimate is that there are about 56,000 tons. A lot of it is from Indian River County. Unfortunately, to date, Indian River County has refused to take any action. You know, the people of Indian River County are paying good money for their recycling to be collected, and you know, most of it hasn't been recycled. And as I said, most of it's been dumped and abandoned on the railside property. Tropical Recycling had the Indian River contract for 6 years or so. The recycling was supposed to be processed on our property. All the equipment was there to do it. There was supposed to be a profit split with Indian River County when the materials were sold. There was a good amount of news at the time that contract was entered into that the county would actually make money from the materials being recycled and resold. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. These just thousands and thousands of tons of materials were dumped on our property, but yet Indian River County saw fit to thank Tropical for their service to the county. These are some pictures of the mountains of garbage. They probably range in height from 10 to 20 feet high. And again, our current estimate is that there are approximately 56,000 tons of materials on our property. And we're calling on Indian River County to do something about it. It's your stuff, and we'd like you to come get it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
To the chair, I just,
Go ahead.
I'm not seeing any comment back from the board, and I do appreciate that because we've had threatened litigation. I do at least want to address, just so the public can hear, I did write a letter to Railside LLC back in October of this year, specifically concerning some of the terms that were used today, such as dumping and abandoning. I said that Indian River County is not responsible for the abandoned recyclables on the property. The county never delivered recyclable materials to the property under Indian River County's agreement with Tropical Exchange Corp., doing business as Tropical Recycling. Tropical brought its vehicles to the county's materials recovery facility in Vero Beach and picked up the county's recyclables. Under the agreement, once Tropical picked up the recyclables became the property of Tropical. Thus, the, quote, abandoned recyclables, unquote, at the property are the property of Tropical and not the county. You had also indicated that the abandoned recyclables violate Section 403.413 of Florida statutes. Per Section 403.413 Florida statutes, it is unlawful for any person to dump litter on any private property unless prior consent of the owner has been given, and unless the dumping of such litter by such person will not cause a public nuisance. As noted above, the county did not dump anything on the property. Additionally, per the lease between Tropical and Railside LLC, the property was to be used for a recycling facility. Thus, Railside LLC has given consent of the delivery of the recyclables to the property. The last time any recyclables came from the county was on August 14, 2019, which was during the term of the lease between Railside LLC and Tropical. Thus, this appears to be a matter between Railside LLC and Tropical.
Thank you. All right, we'll
I'd
move
just
on
like
to,
respond to that for a second. With all due respect to everyone here, my suggestion would be for Indian River County to hire an environmental lawyer. Your assertion that Indian River County bears no responsibility is actually not true under Florida environmental law. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to come to some reasonable settlement of this matter.
Thank you for your comments. And we will move on to public notice items. Mr. Reingold.
Thank you very much. We have a public notice of a public hearing scheduled for March 10th, 2020, which will be to consider an ordinance amending Title 10, Impact Fees of the Code of Indian River County by adopting proposed new impact fee schedules for the unincorporated Indian River County and municipalities, and by adopting related amendments, including revisions to level of service standards used in impact fee calculations and revisions to impact fee benefit districts. This will be legislative in nature, and again, this will be a public hearing which will be held on March 10th, 2020. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is Office of Management and Budget, Children's Service Funding Allocation for fiscal year 2020-2021. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Kristen Daniels, Budget Director. Before you today is the proposed Children's Services funding allocation for the upcoming 2020-21 fiscal year. So as the board is well aware, beginning in fiscal year 2019-20, Children's Services was funded at the full 1/8 of a mil funding cap that is allowed for the program. The proposed funding for fiscal year 2021, also at the full 1/8 of a mil based on last year's tax roll, is $2,205,912, which is an increase of $143,301, or 6.9% over the prior year. And I would like to note that the 1920 funding did include $50,000 for a needs assessment study. This study will not be conducted in 2021, which will allow that additional $50,000 to be awarded to Children's Services agencies next fiscal year. So between the increase in the tax roll and that the funding for the needs assessment study, the increase available to the agencies is actually $193,301. And just for clarification, this funding recommendation is independent of the proposed Children's Trust referendum, as this allocation is just per the existing county ordinance. That's all I have. Thank you.
Are there any
Move
questions?
staff recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is Utility Services Amendment and Extension of Cattle Lease Agreement. Welcome back.
Move approval.
I have a motion by Commissioner Solari, a second by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is request to waive bid process for purchase of chlorine pumps for North County Water Plant.
Move approval.
I have a motion by Commissioner Flesher with a second by Commissioner Solari. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is CK Construction, replace 16-inch water distribution valve, 58th Avenue South of 5th Street Southwest. Mr. Bark.
Hey, thank you. We're asking for board approval for an emergency item. We issued purchase order number 85831 to CK Contractors because the amount is over Mr. Brown's amount of $75,000, the purchasing manually. We wanted to bring this to the board for ratification. This is the very issue that we had talked about to the board with the County Road 510 improvements. 58th Avenue at the time had been improved. Now the water main is at 10 feet below this edge of the pavement. So we're gonna have to shut down the southern portion of 58th Avenue, right around 5th Street Southwest and 58th. We're gonna have to put in sheet piling. We're gonna have to put in dewatering, so we're working with Public Works on that plan with respect to the MOT and the dewatering. And I just wanna give you some of the background on why this is gonna cost close to $100,000 for a leaking 16-inch valve that has to be replaced. So we're respectfully requesting that the Board of County Commissioners ratify the emergency purchase order, which was issued last week to CK Contractors in the amount of $84,005.
Move approval.
I have a.
Ooh, toughie one here.
I know.
Quite-
I have a motion by Commissioner Flesher, he said it louder, second by Commissioner Solari.
This much.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is an Agriculture Advisory Committee appointment.
Thank you very much. We have a vacant position on the Agriculture Advisory Committee. It is the citrus industry representative. We've received one eligible application from a Mr. Tom Jerkins. County Attorney's Office simply recommends the board consider the application and decide whether to appoint the applicant to the committee.
All
And then, or, wait, see if there's a second. No.
No. Oh, okay. Commissioner O'Brien?
Well, if there's not a second, then I don't have discussion
Is there
under
a
the
second to
motion,
the
so.
Okay, then it dies for lack of a second.
Okay.
All right, moving on to Solid Waste Disposal District, Spring Residential Paper Shredding Event on April 11th. Did I skip anything? Welcome.
Morning. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. We have Sue Flack here, who's with the Solid Waste Disposal District, who can tell you about this important event, and she'll get some more information about it.
Welcome, Sue.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. So the Solid Waste Disposal District will be partnering with Southeast Secure Shredding to host our spring residential paper shredding event on Saturday, April 11th, 2020. The residents of Indian River County are invited to bring 3 boxes or bags of paper up to 35 pounds each to be shredded and recycled at no cost to them. This event will be held from 9 to 2, and it will be $5 a vehicle. And that's it.
All right.
And Sue, just the background on this, the shredding event has been a very popular, successful event. And then Southeast changed how they were going to charge us. And so from the solid waste district point of view, it got to be fairly prohibitive expensive. But now we have waste management coming in to help do the funding so that we can now offer this shredding event. So I'd like to publicly thank Waste Management for stepping up and providing the funds for this. Can you develop a colored flyer with this information after we approve this that I can send electronically to my South County mail list?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. With that, move staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is 13th Amendment to Republic Services.
We're asking for board approval for a 13th Amendment to Republic Services. Going back several years ago, the bid that was initially awarded to Republic Services included the landfill gas collection system. Since that time, there's been various changes with some of the wells that are abandoned and now some of the new wells that are going in place, and some of the additional what we call O&M or operation maintenance of the collector systems, as well as the new equipment that's been put in as part of the $16 million expansion. So we are respectfully requesting board approval for the increased operation and maintenance of this equipment, so we don't quote-unquote run to failure, and we actually maintain these things, especially because we now have a landfill gas agreement with Indian River Eco District. We're going to be looking to increase the quantity and quality of the landfill gas so that we can be ready to deliver said gas based on the high methane concentration to the Eco District. So funding for the SWID Class 1 landfill services is budgeted and available in the SWID recycling account, which is funded from SWID assessment and user fees. It would be 2 parts. One is the amendment to the Class 1, as well as the $45,000, 320 lump sum fee that would be on the non-Class 1. So we're asking for 2 things. One is to approve the 13th Amendment to Republic Services landfill contract for the additional landfill gas operation maintenance services as described, and secondarily to authorize the chairman to execute said agreement. Available for any questions that the board may have.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Most staff recommendation. But you had a question.
We have a motion
Second.
and a
Second
second.
the motion.
And a question. So at what point, so this goes back to 2011, at what point do we ever want to revisit this to see? I mean, that's just a long time to not look at the numbers in an open bid process.
So that was part of the bid process. We came back to the board and we did have an extension, a 7-year extension to
Right.
said agreement. So we're currently under that contract. Do you know when that expires? That expires in 2025. So we certainly can take a look at either taking that whole package and rebidding it, or maybe even separating out
Splitting it.
portions of that
Right,
contract.
because it seems like there maybe should be decoupled at some point and broke into two pieces.
Yeah, there's certain Class 1 landfill operations at the 13 and change that the Republic Service had given to us, but then there's the non-Class 1 for the convenience centers, for the hazardous household waste operations, and what we describe as other non-Class 1 operations that are included under that umbrella.
Okay.
I had a question for sorry. Vinny, has the Eco District sort of taken any of the gas yet, or do you know the status of them?
They have not. They have about a year to be able to get all their design and permitting put forth, and there's certain stipulations within that contract that they have to be up and running by that time, but we certainly want to make sure that we have our ducks in a row, so to speak, prior to them taking that. I can get you the exact date of when they're supposed to be having that, a year after the effective
Just,
date.
have you been in contact with them? Are they moving forward? Does it seem like this is going to happen?
Yes, they are moving forward. We have been in contact with some of their representatives, and we're looking at using Tetra Tech to help us develop and refine our existing gas model to make sure we have the highest quality gas available. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? There is a motion by Commissioner Flesher with a second by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then our next item is amendment to number 1 to Site Crafters of Florida.
So again, thank you, Chairman. Per board direction on February 19th of 2019, staff was directed to improve and clean up the yard waste site. Two things have happened since that time. One, we were notified by Mr. Mulch that they were ceasing operation. We did go under contract with Atlas. Part of the agreement with Atlas is they're supposed to do improvements to this area up to $250,000. They're currently going through their design and due diligence to be able to provide that to us, but Site Crafters was also the one that was able to go out for bid on the concrete crushing. So we now have material that's at the site that's ready to be brought over to the improved area, and we're looking to kind of do the improvement to the yard waste area in 2 phases. I think the entire area would be too large, or much larger than what Atlas has proposed. So Site Crafters has provided us a fee not to exceed I believe $173,780 to take that crushed material, to bring it over to the site, and also to raise the site because we do have some low areas. So this is going to help stabilize these soft areas where folks had come to the board, if you recall, to say that it was spongy in certain areas, there were low-lying areas, and to be able to take that crushed material on the east side of this property and bring that up. Then, once that is done, Atlas will then switch their sides to the east side of the property and focus on the north and the western portion of the site to be able to do their $250,000 improvement per their contract. So this condition is to respectfully request the allowance for Site Crafters to be able to improve that area on the east side. So staff is looking for board recommendation to say 2 things. One is to waive the requirements for the bids for the additional work, since Site Crafters of Florida Incorporated is under an existing contract agreement for the yard waste site improvements, and this is an extension of said work. And secondarily, to approve amendment number 1 and authorize the chairman to sign the agreement after review and approval by the county attorney's office as to form and legal sufficiency. And certainly myself and Mr. Met are available for any questions that the board may have.
Are there any questions? Yes, Commissioner Zork.
Just one, with the increased value of the contract, we're still under the CCNA threshold to not have to go back out and re-bid something? I'm getting I saw a nod.
The short answer is yes.
Okay. All right,
Any
thank
other
you.
questions? Was that it? Did you move approval?
Move approval.
I will second that. There is a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Sorry, it's a long meeting. Anything else for the good of the order? As always, it is a pleasure to spend my morning with you.